First, just a note of clarity, and I want to thank the chair for bailing us up there and reading those plaques. It's not the combined effort or combined age of our eyesight, it's actually the contrast of blue and silver in these lights that made that plaque almost unreadable. So, note to everybody out there, if you're doing something like this in the future and you want to award somebody, make sure that the contrast on that plaque is not reflected. As we witness around the globe and certainly within our own country, the discussion and implementation of education reform is front and center. There is also some schools of thought, and that pun is intended, that we are also in danger of reform fatigue. Our first guest speaker is considered one of those rock stars, international rock stars. Sorry, Pasi. Of school reform internationally. He describes education leadership, his vision in Finland in 1990, where he says and states, an educated nation cannot be created by force. Teachers, students, and principals must be heard. We are creating a new culture of education, and there is no way and no turning back. Basic to this new culture is the cultivation of trust between education leadership and schools. You have his bio in your program. Please read it. It is our esteemed privilege and pleasure and honor to have Pasi with us today. Please help me welcome him.
Come on
aloha. And I might add, he traveled all the way from the East Coast via California. If you looked at your weather map this morning, he's probably happy to be here with us today.
Good morning. Aloha. How are you? It's wonderful to be here. I'm very honored also to be in this conference and stand here before distinguished people that were mentioned, particularly the First Lady and legislators and others, so I'll try to do my best here. I am from Finland, and before I say anything else, I would like to introduce the rest of the Finnish delegation here, because there are a couple of other people. If you want to speak to anybody else, we have Katja Silvera here. Katja, can you stand up? She's the honorary consul here in Hawaii. And then Anne, stand up. Anne is doing her thesis here, or the degree in early childhood education. So if you want to talk to other things, if you don't believe what I'm saying, you can always say, always learn with the others. All right, I'm going to speak about two things really, and I think that just like previous speakers here said, this is a unique opportunity, not only for this state, but everybody else in the United States, because of the, now is the moment to rethink and maybe even think outside of the box some of those things in education that you have been doing during the course of the last years. So please take this opportunity now and think in a new way, and I'll try to help you to think, point out some of those things that I think could be helpful for that. So I speak a little bit about how the new global landscape of education looks like from other countries. I'm not going to speak so much about Finland itself, because everybody already knows Finland, and most of you have been in Finland, right? So I'm going to provide you with more like a global thing. So if there's anybody here who asks the question that, so what do we know from the world, what works, what are the things that are happening and working in other places? I speak a little bit about those things and try to create a kind of a framework for thinking in more kind of a deeper way and evidence-based way as well, so that we don't need to rely on beliefs and opinions. And then the second part of my time here, I try to leave some, probably 5 lessons for you from the world, from other places, for empowerment. And I think this is an absolutely fantastic topic for the conference, the idea of empowerment, improvement and empowerment, they go hand in hand, and that's why I was thinking about some of those things that could be helpful for you. If this is okay with you, is it? Okay, so I'm not going to speak from the podium all the time. I have another mic here, so I'll walk around with you there and ask some of you to speak, just like you do with your students. Remember this feeling in the school when you're kind of afraid that teacher will come to me and I have to stand up and speak? I'm going to do exactly this today. So get ready, okay? And I'm the luckiest speaker of all this today here in this conference, because my time will be ending exactly when the first football game begins. So I don't care what you do with your iPads and laptops, because I know that you're not watching football, but I feel pity about everybody else. Okay, let me ask you first thing, how many teachers do we have here? Wonderful, very good. How many students? Who are students? Oh, give a good hand to students here. All right. Now, do we have a math teacher in the room? Anybody who teaches mathematics? One. Okay. I think we need more than one. Okay. Is there anybody who thinks that you're good in mathematics? Raise your hand if you think that you're good in math. Now we have more. Okay. So there's some hope here. Okay. Now, the first thing that I'm going to do with you, and I'll take this mic. I have a first test. I know that Americans who love testing, right? Not necessarily standardized testing, but you like to have data. So I want to have some data now before I say anything else about how good you really are in mathematics. Okay? So this is a very simple thing that I'm going to do with you. This Sunday morning is not really a good time to do this, but I'm still try to do that. You're going to see in a minute some numbers up here and there, and both of those screens. They're going to be the same numbers, so it doesn't matter which side you look at. So when you see the number, the only thing you need to do is to shout out that number as loudly as you can. And now, this is a good moment because you can think yourself as somebody sitting in the stadium supporting your football team today, okay? And it's going to be a tight game anyway, so your support, your voice and noise will be very important, okay? So you have a license to shout out very loud this morning. So you see the number, shout it out as loud as you can. When you see the next number coming, you add that number to what you said previous. Now, this is a complicated, okay? And shout it out as loudly as you can. When you see the next number coming, you add that number to the previous sound, okay? Are you ready? Are you ready? Yes! No, I said, are you ready? All right, let's try how this goes. 1, 2, 3, now, let's go. 2040. No. Think about your football team. If you behave like this, they're gonna lose before practice. Okay? New England Patriots. Anybody supporting New England Patriots here? I need your voice now, okay? Loudly. Okay? Are you ready? Yes. No, I said, are you ready? Yes. Wonderful. 1, 2, 3, let's go. Louder. 2040, 2070, 3070, 3090, 4090, 5000. All right. How many of you think that you're good in mathematics? Raise your hand. There's only one math teacher there. Okay, I'll give you a moment so that you can really do your arithmetics there. This is an elementary school math, right? Now, how many of you said 5,000? Raise your hand, honestly. Now look around. It's only for those who said 5,000. Look around. Keep your hand up. Look around so you're not alone. Okay? Now, what's going on here? So that some people are still counting, so take your time. If you follow me on Twitter, I'm going to tweet you this page so that you can go home and ask your husband or wife to, or if you have primary school kids at home, they're very good in this. They can tell you what it is. 4,100. So what happened here? Any ideas? Why so many people make a mistake with a simple thing like this? What's that? That's wrong? Okay, we can have a chat afterwards, okay? 10:05, I'll be here and we can do it. Alright? Are you talking about English language? Or? It's the same in Finnish. I do this in Finland all the time, and Finnish people are not smarter than you. Except the kids. When you do this with children, and they get it right. But we don't. It's not about language. I've done this in Chinese and Spanish. It's always the same thing. But there's something here in this exercise that is linked to the education reform. You know, if you look at this country and this country's history of education reforms, it looks exactly like this, right? The reforms keep on coming, and people like you don't have time to think, stop and think that, does this make any sense? And then at some point towards the late afternoon, people realize that, okay, we made a mistake, we need another thing, another approach, okay? So I think we make a mistake in a simple thing like this because we just keep on doing things like in a rhythm, okay? And as soon as you hear somebody saying around you, 5,000, your brain says that it cannot be 5,000 because it's 4,100. But because everybody else is saying 5,000, you say 5,000, okay? Think about it, it's the same thing with the education reform and many other policies. We need the spaces and time to have conversation about these things. Okay? You still don't believe that this is 4,100. It is. Okay, do you like this exercise? That's my presentation, thank you. I can actually start. Now, I have a couple of other things to do you. Let me start by taking all of you here back in time in 15 years. Okay? So let's think just for a moment. This is year 2001. 15 years ago, January, here in the same convention center, and we have a conference like this. So you are here, but this is year 2001. And what you see here is your unknown uncle from Finland. I am your uncle. And I'm not just any uncle, but I'm your very, 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 very wealthy uncle from Finland. Okay? And I'm going to announce you now one thing, seriously, that I have so much money in my pocket that I can take all of you, any of you, around the world, anywhere you want to go, for a week, first class, 5-star hotel, all the expenses covered. But you have to justify your travel by telling me why you think that that place where you go would help you to get empowered, find new ideas, innovations, new solutions to the education things that you have in mind. Now think, 15 years ago, the world was different, okay? The world of education was different. So I'm going to give you just a moment to think about this. Where would you go with my money for a week? If you can go one place, and if you're going to go several places, I want to hear what is the first stop where you go, okay? And then think about, why do I think that place will be helpful for me professionally? Are you with me? Are you with me? Yeah, okay, good. I'll give you 1 minute, think for a moment, turn to the person next to you and say that I would like to go there because I would be likely to find these things, okay? 1 minute, very quick.
Hi everybody, I'm Danny, but my friend Dan here is going to speak. This is a surprise to me. Alright, so our answer is, it's a smart answer. Finland, find this guy. Oh, what's that one? Oh, we would, if we knew the future, we would then go to a place that would not have a good time, maybe Iran or Iraq, and then sort of see the hard way what works and what doesn't.
Oh, thank you so much. Regarding the first one, the first choice, thank you so much for being polite and saying Finland, but I can tell you one thing is a wrong answer. Because Finland didn't exist in the year 2001. It was not in the map of education at all. Yeah? You heard me right. You want me to repeat this again? We didn't exist in the year 2001. You can ask Katja, our counsel here, if you want to have a kind of official confirmation that Finland's story started a little bit later. Second one, where would you go?
My name is Brenda, and I would go to Havana, Cuba.
And why?
Because they have a 99% literacy rate, and I want to know how they do it. Then I would go to Norway.
Good. Okay. Thank you so much. Who would like to join her to Cuba, Havana? Okay, me too. I want to go. Okay. How about Norway? Okay, is there anybody who would like to go to Sweden? Get out of here. This is an education conference.
Okay, one more thing. Anybody who would like to speak? Okay, I'll take you and then we continue. Where would you go?
I would have gone to Australia because they were some of the early implementers of one-to-one technology, and I was interested in the way technology would have improved education.
Thank you so much. Australia, who would like to go to Australia? Raise your hand. Okay, look around. New Zealand. Okay, Germany. Good. France. Okay, good. How about England? Anybody want to go to Canada? Okay, look around this. You know, my point here is that something has changed since that. Because now if you ask this question, where would you like to go now? About 75% of you would say that we would like to go to Finland. Of course, because I am here. But then there are people who say, I would definitely want to go to Singapore, okay? Or Japan, or Canada. Many people would like to go to Canada. So something has happened, and I'm going to tell you what. Those of you who have been in the business of education long enough, like if you were teaching in 2001, or you did other things in education, you probably remember that was a year when, that was a time when we heard a lot about the organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, or OECD. Have you heard about OECD? And you probably heard also in a conference like this that the OECD had just completed collecting data for the first time ever for the thing called PISA, Program for International Student Assessment, where the United States was taking part, Canada, Mexico, Finland, and 31 or 2 other countries. Okay? And we knew also, we would have heard in a conference like this, that later this year, in 2001, the OECD is going to publish the results. In the study that was looking at what the 15-year-olds here in America and Finland and other countries can do with what they have learned in math and reading and science in school. So it was a new type of study that was not comparing what kids remember or how they master the curriculum, but what they can do with the knowledge that they have learned in school. So they were excited about this. But who's going to be the winner or the winners of this new study? And I can tell you one thing, there were many candidates in conferences like this, people from Germany and France and Norway and Sweden and Denmark and England. Many of them would have said that, I think that my country will be there in the very top of the international ranking because we have done so much with our education reform and spent a lot of money. But there was one country that didn't have any such expectations, and that was Finland. Because we said to ourselves that, as long as we are better than Sweden, anything goes. And we seriously thought that we're going to be somewhere there in the middle of all the OECD countries, all these 30, 35 countries, and that would have been fine, okay? So now comes December 2001, same year, and the OECD is releasing these results, and this is how it looks like, okay? So this is the first ever OECD PISA study that hit the world in December 2001, a little after this conference that we had here, and this is what everybody saw. There's Finland, Canada, New Zealand, Australia, Ireland, South Korea, then you have United States here, number 15, Denmark, Sweden was number 9, Finns were very happy about that, of course. And, overall, this whole order of the education world, the global education, was something that people were not expecting. And there's some countries like Germany, for example, that was really like, they were shocked about this. And I remember that day I was working at the University of Helsinki at that time, and in the morning when this news came out, my phone rang, and one of my colleagues called me and said, so how do we explain this now? We had no idea what has happened to Finland and how to explain these things, so in Finland we decided to do nothing. So we said, let's wait 3 years because we knew that the OECD is coming again with the same study 3 years later, and then see how the world looks like in that study. Because some people said in my country that maybe the OECD used the wrong way of measuring Finland. Rather than using inches, they were using centimeters. And you get a different number. So it sometimes happens, So we said, okay, let's wait until the 2003 study, and this is how it looked like. This was released in December 2004. 3 years later, you see that there's Finland, South Korea, Netherlands, Japan, Canada, Belgium, Switzerland. We have United States here, number 24, Norway, number 19, Germany, number 16, Sweden, number 14. Finns were even happier this time because Sweden is going downhill. And still, but still we could kind of understand that what's going on there. So people say that let's wait another 3 years, because my grandmother used to tell me that nobody's so foolish that makes the same mistake 3 times. So if the OECD confirms this in a third round, that was now this time looking at science, after mathematics, then maybe there's something there that is worth kind of a closer look. And this is a 2006 cycle. So now we are in December 2007, early 2008. It's not so long ago, it's about 8 years ago. And it was only then when the world, in more general terms, and Finland realized that something has changed. That the world of education, at least as far as this is based on this new measurement by the OECD, it looks fairly different than before. Okay? And 2 new types of questions emerged that I think is much more significant outcome of this PISA study than any other of these league tables or anything else. I don't care about those that much. But this is what started to happen in 2008 onwards, fairly quickly around the world, that we saw 2 global education questions emerging. And this happened within the education policy circles, within the international organizations, foundations, research communities, universities around the world, and practitioners started to, in conferences like this, talk about 2 important questions that they weren't really speaking about like that before. The first one was that, so what explains the good performance, high performance of some of these countries that seem to be doing very well there across the different studies? Finland and Canada and Japan and South Korea and others. What are they doing? Is there something that is common in all of these countries in terms of what they do? And are they doing something that these other countries are not really taking seriously? Then the other question, of course, was that why some of these traditional high-performing or famous education systems like England or Germany or France or Sweden or the United States, why they are not able to do any better in this new survey. So people started to look at these 2 questions in a more detailed way. Let me show you some of these things that are based on my own research and studies and work of many other people here in the United States and really around the world, where they have been trying to answer the same question. So what are the main or most important policies or reform ideas within those countries that have not been very successful, that they are less successful than they were expecting? The first one is, and this is probably the most common thing, that in all of these countries, people seem to be thinking, or politicians seem to be thinking, that competition is the key to success in education. In other words, as we redesign the education system so that schools have to compete against one another over enrollment, somehow they will start to do things in a better way. Does it sound familiar to you? Yeah, that's why we have seen charter schools here in the United States, private education expanding in different parts of the world, and even within the public systems, different ways of measuring and comparing school systems so that parents can then see which schools are doing better than the others, and this creates a kind of a competition. Okay? Now the second one is the idea of standardization. In all of those education systems, policymakers and politicians and some researchers also said that maybe the problem is with the standards, or not so standard, but lack of standardization. We need to standardize more precisely and clearly what we are expecting every teacher, every student, every school to do. And by creating these more precise and higher standards, and then standardize through them education, they were saying that this will improve the work of the school and teachers. Okay? Sounds familiar to you? Okay. Third one, test-based accountability, building on 2 ideas: stronger accountability for teachers and schools
to deliver the results, these standards, and more frequent use of standardized testing to get this data that is used to decide this accountability thing. Around the world, this has been a movement, more testing, stronger accountability, different types of consequences for those who have not been able to deliver, and this has been a kind of a faith of belief, assumption of this morning. Sounds familiar? Okay, good. Deprofessionalization. There have been increasingly policymakers and politicians and systems who say that we should not give teaching and school leaders only a kind of a monopoly of educators, but we should have a system where anybody can teach. If you're interested in kids or teaching math or something, we should have a system where those bright people could enter the teaching profession and teach.
And I'm not sure this is really valid logic. But that's what we have seen. School principals increasingly around the world are people who have nothing to do, no experience in education. They come from failed businesses or something else, but they have theories, ideas how to manage and make schools work. Sounds familiar? And then finally, privatization. This is what Diane Ravis after me is going to speak a little bit more. Handing over public schools to somebody else to do the work better. Okay. Now, if you look at the other side, I'm just going to show you how some of these more successful education systems have been responding to the similar things. And the interesting thing is that you can see almost the opposite way of building your education policies and reform thinking in these countries that have been more successful. Cooperation. All those countries, those successful education systems, one way or the other, they think that education is about cooperation, it's about collaboration, networking, sharing, working together, helping one another, rather than competing against one another. And it's a very common thing in all of the, across the successful education system community. The other one is, rather than standardized things, is to look for creative ideas, individualized, personalized education at the level of the school and classroom and the system, so that we delegate the authority to those who are doing it, asking them to find good solutions. It's very much about empowering, what we were speaking about earlier, the same thing. The third one is the trust-based responsibility, building trust, again, something that we heard earlier here, and being very clear about the professional responsibility that the educators and school leaders should have. Very different, it's completely different, kind of opposite idea of the test-based accountability and trust-based responsibility. In Finland, we say that accountability is what is left when responsibility is subtracted. Okay? And this is, if you're a school teacher, you understand this very well. Okay? The stronger accountability will eat this entire responsibility away from your work, and you do things in a different way. Then we have the professionalization, a very strong feature of all of these high-performing education systems, where teachers' education has been elevated and upgraded to academic research universities, to higher advanced degrees, and only those people who have those degrees are allowed to teach. And the same thing with the school leadership, school principals across the board, a really clear trend. And then the thing called equity in education, focusing on equity and driving education improvement through equity. I speak a little bit more about this equity because it's something that means different things for different people. And when you speak about equity in education here in Hawaii, I think the first thing you need to do is to make sure that everybody understands what we're talking about, because it's not an easy thing. Now, this is what I call this a germ, or global educational reform movement, because it really has behaved like a virus. You know, it's spread around the world, and it travels with the consultants and companies like Pearson and McKinsey and others. They go around the world and they infect the education systems and people there, and then get sick. And then the Finnish way. Or if you don't like Finland, you can say that the fourth way, as some people call it, kind of a next generation of change, thinking about change. Now, this is how the germ virus has spread this year. You know, it all started in England in the 1980s, like many bad ideas. Sorry, my British English. Went to North America, Australia, New Zealand, and then finally throughout the world. So my estimate is that this is how the world looks right now in terms of the germ infection. I have been in all of these places, so this is my experience about what the situation is. And now we want to do something to improve these things. We have to change things very quickly. Now, what about technology? I didn't say anything about technology. Do you think that technology will be a saving grace in education? Some people say yes, some people say no. I think we need to be very careful with that, right? Don't believe everything you hear about technology. If you don't believe that, take a look at this little clip over here. One of my main messages to you as well, not only here in Hawaii, but all across the United States, where I work and live right now. First of all, the equity here, when I speak about equity, I'm simply meaning that the kind of, how strong is the relationship between children's family background and their success or failure in the school system. So if you look at the school system, like here in Hawaii or in Finland, if you have a situation where the family background of the child explains very strongly what happens to them in the school, whether they are doing well or not, then we have an issue with equity. We have less equity there in the system. If we have a school system, society where anybody can be successful regardless of where the kids come from, more or less, where the connection link between the family background and the achievement in the school is weaker. In other words, the social economic background explains less about the achievement, then we're talking about more equitable society. Okay? And now, what we haven't done too much until now, very recently, is to look at how the different education systems do in terms of equity. You always see these league tables where the United States is 27 or 15 or something like this, but you rarely or never see how America is doing in terms of equity, right? So let me show you some of these things. So this is how the graph will look like. So this is the achievement scale here, math, reading, science combined in the international studies, and this is the equity thing. So when the countries are moving from left to right here, the equity increases. So they become more and more equitable when they move from left to right. Are you with me? Okay, good. So if this is the average of these two variables, then of course this space here is something where nobody would like to be. This is where you have issues with both equity and quality. This is where you have higher academic achievements, but you have issue with equity. In other words, in this society, this education systems, the family background, the home is really explaining a lot of the achievement and learning. This is where equity is strong, but quality is weaker. And this green zone, this one is where everybody would like to be, right? Okay, so let me take this away and ask you another question. Where do you think the United States is? America. If there was a thing called American education system, the tricky thing, of course, is that there's no such thing as American school system. Because you have 50 states and 15,000 districts and 100,000 schools, and they have a lot of freedom and autonomy to do things in different ways. So, but this is how the OECD is treating this thing. So, where would America be? Somewhere here? Here? How many of you think that America would be there in the red zone? Raise your hand if you think that's where America is. In the red zone here. Okay, some of you. Now let me show you this. This is where the United States is. Yeah. You surprised? Most people are, because this is not a bad thing. It's not great either. But those people who say that public education system here in America is rotten and collapsing and horrible and awful, they don't know what they're talking about. And then they're not talking about evidence that the international data that compares America to other countries is showing. Okay? This is Australia and England or UK. So now, those people who want to do fast conclusions like this 4100 type of things, you conclude that if you speak English in your country, you're average. And the next conclusion is that learn another language to do better, right? Seriously, that would be a great thing to do, to insist that every child has an opportunity and access to learn another language, whatever it is, okay? Because if you do that, you're like Canada. Look at Canada here. Canada is doing so well because of the strong equity here and high quality that I'm often saying that Canada is in heaven. Do you have any Canadians in the room here? Now everybody wants to be Canada. There's one Canadian out there. I often hear people saying that the world needs more Canada, but it's particularly true in education. Canada is doing very, very well. Several provinces and territories in Canada are doing excellent work in education. Okay? So here are the other ones. And here you see Sweden, this is Norway, Iceland, Italy, South Korea, Japan, this is Canada, and Estonia. Okay? So those seem to be the places where Estonia's here. Estonia, wonderful. They're doing very well. Okay, but all of you, if you have done your foundation course in statistics, you see that first of all we're talking about correlation here, not causation. Be very clear about that. But there seems to be a correlation between these two variables here, because these countries are not all over the place. They are like nicely here. It's almost like a stairway. Remember the song, The Stairway to Heaven? Or something like this.
There's a lady with shore, all that glitters is gold, and she's buying the stairway to heaven.
So now the first lesson for Hawaii here is that if you want to climb up, if you want to go join the other countries, other systems there in heaven, a good policy, good way of thinking is to work harder on equity, be more precise what equity means, why is it important, and then invest in equity more than you have done right now. This is where Finland was 40 years ago, over here, this is our flag. And we had a school system that time that was dividing students into basically two different school systems. We decided to put that away, no private schools, no public education. Every child will go to the similar public school, and we insisted that every school has to be a good school. That was the Finnish dream, to make sure that every school is a good school so that parents don't need to think about where the good schools are. And if you look at this, when the policy started to work since 1970s, this has been the Finnish way. Oh, we're in the middle of heaven. And this is really the story of enhancing equality and equity in education more than anything else. So that's now when we have studied the educational success in Finland, that's what many people, most people conclude that this is what has happened. Again, we are not speaking about causality here, we are not saying that equity has enhanced the quality or achievement there, but we think that equity has been particularly instrumental in this journey. Okay? These are the education systems that we often hear people envying, Shanghai, Singapore, Hong Kong, but you see that these other two guys here, they have a huge issue with equity, so they are not really high-performing systems in the same sense. Now, what is this one? What is this country here? Which one? No, Russia is not here at all. No? This country, you know, this country is so close to heaven that it's knocking on heaven's door. It's the Netherlands. Okay, remember this song, Knocking on Heaven's Door? Or something like this. And now, Hawaii, Honolulu, you can sing with me if you want to, before the football game. Are you ready? I want to hear everybody here. Come on, sing with me. Knock, knock, knocking on heaven's door. You can do much better than that. Please, raise your hand, Hawaii. Knock, knock, knocking on heaven's door. One more time, take your mobile phones. Knock, knock, knocking on heaven's door. Wonderful. I love you people. I really do.
picture that we have now about the global performance. Very different than we had in 2001 or even 5 years ago, because now we know much more about what has made some of these countries, these education systems here, perform as they do. Okay? It may be that we will learn much more about something else in the future, but at least as it is now, this is how the picture looks like. And let me conclude here now by leaving you with 5 lessons. 5 things that I think would help you to empower your public school system here in Hawaii and beyond. These are the things, these are not only the lessons that you can find in Finland, these are from all these high-performing systems. I try to keep this concrete and brief so that you can think about this a little bit afterwards. The first one is just a follow-up from the previous one. I think it's very important here that you work harder, also in terms of investing attention and resources in equity, not just in excellence. I think the American education policy discourse is too much dominated by the excellence, the kind of a quality side. It's important, but you are undermining the importance of equity. And in many education policy discussions that I have been part of here across the United States, people don't really understand what they're talking about when they talk about equity. I think it's extremely important to define this equity clearly and then see what makes your system more equitable. It's early childhood, it's healthcare and well-being services in the school, it's a broad-based, whole child-based curriculum approach there, and many other things. Special education is extremely important part of this equity program. So we need to have that in place and then make sure that our resources are invested wisely and smartly to do that. And we know from the OECD global statistics that the most successful education systems are those that do exactly this. That they keep the excellence and equity in the policy agenda together, like an equal partners. Then the other one is that invest in teams, not just in individuals. This is another one that here in the United States, when I listen to and engage in education improvement conversations, that I hear much more about improving people, building human capital within education, improving teachers and leaders, and much less about investing in teams, groups. This is a discourse about building social capital together with the human capital. And you know, it's irony here is that your research here in the United States is better than anywhere else in the world to prove this. Okay? And there's a lot of research examples. This comes from Caroliana from Pittsburgh, I think she's there. And she found in a huge study that they did in a public school system in New York and I think Philadelphia, that the low ability teachers perform as well as teachers of average ability if they have strong social capital in their school. So what the research has said, that when we are investing in teams, helping teachers to work together, not alone or against one another, then all the teachers will be kind of empowered to do more. And this is exactly about empowerment. So if you believe in research, it means that we need to shift some of the focus and resources from improving individuals, building human capital, to enhance social capital and teams in our school system. Very important thing, again, that's something that all the successful education systems, Shanghai, Singapore, Finland, Japan, Canada, we all have done this systematically already for many, many years. Then the third one is let the children learn. You know, if there's one thing that breaks my heart here in this wonderful country called America, it's exactly this, that I see more and more schools where children do not really have time and opportunity to play anymore. And I can tell you one thing, that play is one of the most powerful things to empower people. So when we empower our children, they will empower adults, teachers, and others in the school. Okay? But what can you do? You cannot just increase play by telling kids that please play. We adults, we have to do something. We have to remove those obstacles that they now have in many schools here in America so that they cannot play. What we have done in Finland, for example, already for many, many years, is that we have scheduled every school, everywhere, every class
classroom in Finland is scheduled like this. That you have 45 minutes, for example, time to teach whatever you teach, and then children have 15 minutes time to play, do whatever they want to do. And remember, we do this in Finland, where the weather is not very polite to do that, but we still insist that kids go out during this 15-minute break. They put the things on and go out and play. It's an unstructured time for kids to do, learn to play and empower themselves through the play. School days are fairly brief, as you see here, and we have a very light homework policy as well, simply because we think that play is a children's work. That's what they have been designed to do, not homework or sitting in school. So what you can do here in your own state or in your own schools, just ask yourselves whether you have a system that allows every single child time to do what they need to do during the day, play, encourage this thing. If you don't, then you can restructure and reschedule the time. There are many schools now in America that are doing exactly this, inspired by Finland and other places where the play and recess is seen as a very important educational element of the schooling. Okay? Build on available innovation, not only creating new ones. And this, you heard earlier people speaking about referring to innovation. I want to just make sure that we understand clearly what we are talking about. What I'm talking about here in my fourth recommendation for you is that there's so many great educational innovations and ideas designed already, right? That doesn't make any sense to invest billions and billions to invent yet another idea that nobody is using. And most of those great education innovations they are American ideas. They're not Finnish or Canadian or German or Swedish ideas. They are American innovations. And me as a visitor and guest here in this wonderful country, I'm always asking myself, why do you do that? Why don't you, use those ideas that have made other countries great, like Finland and Canada? But you just try to innovate even more. Okay? Let me tell you a brief story, true story from last year. Last spring, I was invited to speak in a conference, and I arrived in the conference a little bit late, so the participants had already come to the room from luncheon. So these organizers asked me to go to the restaurant and eat before I speak. Very nice thing to do, by the way. So I went there, and soon when I was seated, I was alone there, another person came there, and it was this man. Do you recognize him? Who is he? It's George Pataki. Yeah? Yeah? I had a lunch with George Pataki there. Of course, I didn't, just like you, I didn't really recognize who this man was, but I knew that he was speaking in the same conference with me, so we started to have a conversation. So I asked him, after hearing his name, tell me what do you think about American school system? And he gave me without a breath, about 3 minutes opinion about how bad and horrible and awful American school system is, including having too many bad teachers and lousy principals and low-performing schools. That I didn't know what to say. Okay? And then he asked me that, what do you think about American schools? Because he knew that I was teaching at Harvard. And I said, well, if there's any moment, this is it, not to answer this question. So I said to George, there's so many things I don't understand here in America, and in your school system, that I would rather not answer this question. And he said, so what it is that you don't understand here, he said. And I said, among many things, one of those is that there's so many great education innovations and ideas made here in America through your research and practitioners and professors and institutions
that we have used in Finland to make our system great. And people have done the same in Singapore and Canada and many other countries, but you are not doing that. I cannot see those things in your education, legislation, or policies or anything like this. George was eating his lunch, and then all of a sudden he turned to me and said,
Pasi, I need another example, third example. And then something in my mind said that, I'm talking to a businessman, somebody who has been running the state of New York for 3 terms, probably a very, very wealthy guy. So something in my mind said, now say this. So I said, George, I give you 2 examples for free. The third one will cost you a lot of money. Okay? And then he looked at me seriously. He looked at me and said, I'm going to run for the president here. And nobody knew that before because he just announced it on the same day. And he said, if I'm going to make it all the way to the Washington D.C. to the White House, can I give you a call? I said, sure, George. I can be your advisor if you need. So, if you haven't decided your mind yet in a Republican presidential race and you have anything to do, please help me to get to the White House. But I think George is gone. Anyway, this is a true story about the American innovation. I seriously think that you should do much better use of the things that you have here and focus less on having new child schools and new systems and policies that is trying to bring you yet another innovation that Finland and Singapore and Canadians use. If you want to do that, thank you so much because it's helpful for us. And finally, and this is my last thing here, and this is the First Lady I think spoke about this thing already. I think it's absolutely critical that in these days that we are in now and in the future, that we celebrate failure in our societies, but particularly in our school systems, just like we celebrate success. Just like you heard from the First Lady, that you rarely, and not only in business, this is true also in life, that most of you, if you have succeeded somewhere, think about anything that you have succeeded. What took you there? Success often follows follows immediately after failure. If you cannot fail, if we're not preparing our kids to be wrong or fail, they're not likely to achieve ever anything original. So this is so important for the Finns, for example, and this is an idea for you for free. I give you, for you in Hawaii, I give all my consultations for free. Other states I ask money for it. But in Finland we already started to do this many years ago, and we created a National Day of Failure. It's in October 13 every year, when everywhere in the workplaces and families and communities and schools, we stop for a moment and we talk about how important failure is. We try to educate our young people to think that failure and success are not the opposites of one another. I said, young people seem to be thinking like this in most education systems in the world, because this is what we teach them to think. Don't fail. If you fail, I'm going to punish you, or you're going to get a bad grade. You have to seek for success. But in Finland, we try to help people to see that, fail, and fail early, and fail often, and learn from those mistakes. Because when you fail enough, and you learn enough, you're going to be successful. Okay? So we have this October 13 as a National Day of Failure. I was speaking about the same thing in another state in the East Coast. And I made the same recommendation that you should also have establish a statewide Day of Failure. And you can change the culture. You can create a completely new generation of people who think differently about learning, schooling, business, work, innovation, all those things. Somebody in the audience stood up and said, here in America we have already a Day of Failure. But we celebrate, we have the Day of Failure only every other year, and it's the first Tuesday of November. And of course I didn't know what the first Tuesday of November is, and I said, why do you do it every other year? Why don't you do it like every year? And then somebody said to me that, well, it's an election day. Well, you can do this in many ways. Let me close my time here with a little clip from young people in Finland who have been behind this idea of the Day of Failure. And they speak a little bit about why they think failure is important. And with this, I thank you very much for your attention. I wish you all the best in your work, but let's take this 45-second clip.
2 years ago in Finland, we started the first Day for Failure.
With a single idea in mind.
That we can change
Our culture around failure. The way people talk about it.
the way people feel about it.
And understand failure as a learning experience. We thought the first step to make our vision reality.
Was to ask people to tell about their failures and the lessons they learned.
And then
Suomalainen asennehan on aina se, että epäonnistuminen on tosi iso juttu ja sitä hävetään ja se myös vaikuttaa siihen, että ihmiset ei lähde yrittämään ja ihmiset ei edes aloita asioita sen takia, että pelkää epäonnistua.
Se laitti se pakille muun katsomaan eri tavalla.
Se oli musta niin hirveästi paskaa. Mä olin niin huono, että mä olin jo valmis heittää hannut tiskiin.
Mun mielestä me ollaan liian paljon pelätään virheitä ihan kaikessa mitä me tehdään, kun nehän on just se kehityksen paikka.
Koska jos ei ole floppia, ei myöskään hittejä.
Ja mulla on vähän sellainen sanonta, että jos ei ole koskaan kipeää, niin ei tiedä miltä tuntuu olla terve.
Aina ei voi voittaa. Melkein.
This year is no different, just bigger and bolder.
Join us on the 13th of October and celebrate the Day for Failure with us by organizing a workshop or an event in your local area.
Check out our website dayforfailure.com to find out more on how to get involved.
And remember, if you've never failed,
You've never tried anything new.
Thank you so much.